Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a very special episode of the Nourish with Renata podcast, and also a special bonus feature for my Love Your Cycle perimenopause edition ladies. I'm delighted to introduce you to a woman that I've known for, oh gosh, it's been a minute. It's been quite a while, which is really wonderful. And we have reconnected and we've discovered that we both love talking about this particular subject, which is why I wanted her to come on and to share her wisdom because she is filled with so much incredible guidance. So thank you for being here, Jody.
Of course. Thank you, Renata. It makes my heart so happy that we have reconnected and that we reconnected over this topic. So I'm really
Yeah.
happy to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. So really the first thing is we got to let everyone know a little bit more about you and what it is that you do. So would you share that for us, please?
Of course, yes. I am a faith-based coach for midlife women, and I help them really find their focus, renew their purpose, and help them navigate all the relationship changes that happen in midlife with adult kids, aging parents, your life partner, so that they can step into the second half of life that God wants for them. So it's such a time of like confusion and transition, as we all know, and so many things are coming at us at once. So I started my Blooming in the Middle podcast to talk about all those changes and how we can navigate them in a way that feels like it's in alignment with who we are, not just looking at all the pieces of, menopause or the midlife season, but kind of a holistic way of looking at it. So that's what I do. I offer coaching and my podcast, and I speak and I meet with wonderful ladies like you. So yeah, that's
Thank
me.
you. Yeah, you have so many ways to access your wisdom. And this is really why I wanted to have you here because I wanted to pick your brain about many of the things that we as women experience on a mental and emotional level when it comes to navigating this transition from our reproductive years into perimenopause and menopause. Now, for
Yeah.
so many women that I've spoken to, it can feel like you're a completely different person. And that just by itself can be so challenging to deal with, not to mention the additional symptoms that you might experience, like obviously the loss of your period or very irregular periods, or the hormonal changes that might add things like weight gain or dry skin or very different symptoms depending on the woman and her hormone balance. So my first question to you is then, as we're nearing this particular transition, what are some of the symptoms that we might be wanting to keep an eye out for when it comes to our mental and emotional health?
Oh boy. Well, first of all, I think you just listed all of the things that I have experienced. The latest one is hair loss, which I really got serious about this journey when I started losing my hair. It was like, I can gain weight, I can be depressed, I can be sad about this, but take my hair and I am finding a solution.
Yes, so true.
So, and how it happened for me was it sort of like was a pile on. Right before my 50th birthday, um, my husband of 25 years left unexpectedly. That was a huge shock. I had to leave a job that I really loved and had trained for. I went to seminary and got my master's degree in pastoral care and counseling, and I was serving as a director of a counseling ministry, and I loved the job. And then the workplace got very unhealthy, and I had to leave my job. And then I felt like my body was just totally betraying me. It was like I was in pain all the time. I had headaches all the time. I couldn't sleep. I would wake up in the morning feeling like I had been run over by a truck, just body aches everywhere. So I thought it was probably stress, but looking back now, yes, it probably was some stress, a lot of stress, but also I was, entering the menopausal years. So, and oddly enough, all of that stress was going on to such a degree that I didn't really notice when I had my last period. So when a doctor asked me, when was the last time? I was like, I don't recall. So it had been such a long time that, then we started ticking up all the other symptoms. And my doctor was like, yeah, you're in it. This is it. So I think for me, the advice that I give women is just paying better attention to what's happening to you internally as well as externally. It's so easy, I think, to get our attention on all of the things outside of us, like our relationships, um, and, physical changes. And it's such a very ordinary thing to do that, to be trying to solve problems that are outside of us and to not really take time to contemplate, like, what's happening inside of me? Like, how am I really feeling? Checking in with yourself, both, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and saying, I feel change. I feel different. I feel like I don't know myself, or something's happening to me that is different than it was. So I feel like that's a ton of it, is just being a lot more self-aware. And that's hard for us as women, I think, at times, because we are so in tune with everyone else and all the things that we have to take care of. And who has time, right, to sit and contemplate, right? Especially in those years. And it seems like, too, perimenopause, it used to be, that by the time you got there, maybe your kids were older and you had kind of transitioned into a time of life when you did have a little more time to yourself. But a lot of women are having families later. And so there's an overlap of, you might have preteens, teenagers, and you suddenly you're in this season of life where things are starting to happen and you're not sure what, but you don't have time because you've got to get this kid here and that kid there. And so I really think that's a huge piece of it, is just helping women really calm, focus, and take time to say, what's happening inside of me? Like, what do I need right now?
I think that is such a great skill for all of us, no matter where we're at in our life journey, to
Mhm.
take on. Like, how can I set aside some time where I can really focus on me and what's going on inside of me? And I think that might help as well in terms of quelling some of those mental and emotional symptoms that a woman might experience. We talked a little bit about the depressive type symptoms, the low energy, the fatigue. Those can often be exacerbated by continuing to push through those moments of stress by doing more, by being extra productive. That can actually be a real deterrent to your healing. So
Yes.
for you, what did you then do? You increased your self-awareness. You noticed that, hey, I'm in these perimenopausal or menopausal years. How did you navigate those next few months or years in a healthy way?
Well, for me, because I'm a Christian, so I have a very deep faith. And I felt like I was hearing all kinds of advice and getting, input from voices that were very, it was about self-empowerment and, taking hold of your own destiny and just grabbing menopause by the throat, kind of a thing. And for me, that just didn't feel, it felt disingenuous to me. Like, I don't live my life that way. I live my life in a place where I love to, like, be sure that the way I'm living is aligning with my faith. So I think whether that faith is Christianity or whatever it is, you need to know what your values are and make sure whatever you choose to do aligns with those values, so that you're not just listening to, this expert or that expert and trying different things. So for me, what happened was I started looking for help and talked to a number of different people and finally found people that really honored my faith and honored my values. And those were the ones that helped me through, emotionally, relationally. Now, physically, I did have to find a different kind of doctor than I had, because I had been going to just, a very old school medical doctor who, he's like an old man now. And he really, you know, would completely dismiss anything I asked. It was like, It's just part of life, you know? So I started really paying attention. And I think one of the things that helped me is some of the things that you work with, Renata, is the piece of it that is tied to nutrition. So when I started noticing that foods that had always been fine for me were suddenly causing me to feel bloated or I had a headache or low energy, I put those pieces together and then I sought help from like a nutritionist and a naturopathic doctor that kind of got me focused more on, okay, this is part of it. It's not just spiritual. It's not just mental. It's not just, these other pieces of it. It's also physical. So I need to be really aware of that. So I kind of like put those pieces together and said, okay, now I feel comfortable moving ahead in a way that aligns with who I am, but is also, taking seriously what's actually happening in this body of mine.
Mm. And what I hear in that share is you continue to be an advocate for yourself. So
Mhm.
whether it was someone that you could speak to about your mental emotional health, but also your doctor, you advocated for what you felt like was right for you instead of taking, the first person to say, well, that's just part of life.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I do think, that's one piece that I'm so thankful for in the current climate that we're in, where so many women are talking about this season of life. Thank goodness, right? I mean, I think women for ages have been told, oh, just deal with it. Nobody really wants to hear about that. Right? And now it's like, no, we can talk about it. We can help one another. We can share with one another. And I think you and I have talked about how that actually is the way life worked, at one time. And then for whatever reason, in these more modern times, it became more and more and more of a hushed, quiet, secret thing. And I love that it's not that anymore, that we can have conversations and say, this is what helped me, what's helping you, and we can be there for each other.
I love that too. I really think we need to have more conversations where we talk about, hey, perhaps this doctor wasn't the best doctor for me. Where can I go to find someone that is supportive, that's more understanding of menopause and can provide different solutions based upon what I value? So, for you in
Exactly.
particular, was there a resource that you used to find your naturopathic doctor?
There was. I actually came to her through a group of women friends who were
Nice.
basically on the same journey as me. They're a few years behind me, but
Mm.
they are very in tune with both the spiritual side of life, the creative side of life. We actually in a writing group together. And so when we started sharing this, idea that, hey, I'm feeling a little weird, like I look in the mirror and I kind of don't recognize myself anymore, they were like, oh my gosh, I feel that way too. And they were the ones who really kind of helped me. They were seeing this doctor and said, maybe she can help you too. So, yeah, I think that's such a huge piece of it. If we can talk to one another about what's happening, we don't even realize what great resources we are to each other.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And what I'll also do is there is a website that people can go to find doctors that have more accreditation around perimenopause and menopause. So I'll list that below. It's obviously not a comprehensive list, and you do need to go to those doctors to see if they're a fit for you, but you have
Right.
somewhere to start, which is fantastic.
Yeah. I feel like that's such a good point too, Renata, is knowing that, just because a doctor has been recommended to you or a therapist or a spiritual director, whatever it is, it's okay for you to say, you know what, they might have all the credentials in the world, but I just don't feel comfortable with them. Like I need to find someone that I feel like gets me. So it's
Mm.
kind of like dating, right? It's like you gotta, and it's okay to like say, I just want to come in and meet you and see if we might be a good fit for one another. So I think that's a piece of it too that, I don't think I understood that that was okay to do that, that it was like, oh, you made an appointment with the doctor and they're a doctor. So you have to do what they say, right? And if you don't like them, well, that doesn't really matter because they're a doctor. So they're qualified, So I think that's another part of taking back, control over you being responsible for yourself, your physical health, your emotional health, your mental health. If any of those areas are not jiving with what someone's telling you, you need to find someone who does. So,
Yes, I love that you mentioned that because this is yet another conversation that we've had separately where we've talked about giving your power away to those that might be in a position of authority, such as a doctor or someone else. And
Yeah.
it's so important. Like in this time, I feel like more and more as you get into perimenopause and menopause, it's more so about tuning into yourself,
Mm,
understanding who you really are behind the roles or the name tags that you might put on yourself, like a mother or a wife or a et cetera, et cetera. Who are you really? And how can you hold to your own values even more strongly as you continue on through your life?
yeah, yeah. And I feel like that's just, I'm gonna close my blind real quick. I'm
Yes.
getting blinded.
Okay.
Um, I feel like that's, well, now I have a spot on my head. Um, I feel like that's probably what I want to stand on a mountaintop and be shouting is women who, with all of their hearts and all of their intentions and all of the love that they have for everyone, it's absolutely wonderful. It's like stunning to live life like that when you have a family that you want to pour yourself into and you feel like you really were born to do that. If you do that to the detriment of keeping a hold of who you are as an individual, how you've been created and designed, and the gifts and talents you have, when the day comes and those kids grow up and they launch into their lives as you have been preparing them to do, all the work that you've been doing is for that. When the day comes when you and your spouse kind of don't have a lot to talk about because you've poured so much into the family kind of issues, um, when the day comes when you like, I don't know who I am anymore. Like without those roles to fill, I've lost touch with even understanding what makes me happy, what brings me joy, other than the things I've been doing. And now those things I've been doing, nobody needs me to be doing them anymore. So it can be such a huge identity crisis. And I think, if anything, if I could go back and do it again, I think I would honor more those moments of me just being me and having a little bit of time carved out to pursue whatever just made my heart sing that was nothing to do with anybody else but me. And that can sound selfish, especially in a faith-based world. It's like, oh, wow, you're supposed to be self-sacrificial. Yes, that is true. We are called to love others the way we love ourselves, but that does not mean we love others instead of ourselves. We love others as we love ourselves. So when we can take good care of ourselves, we're actually better able to love our people, right? And taking good care of ourselves means not losing who we've been created to be as an individual, right? I tell women all the time that I coach that if you like hide inside the lives of all the people that you love, then how in the world are you going to be able to accomplish the things that God's called you to do? It's like He didn't ask anybody else to do this life, He asked you to do it. So if you have dreams and hopes and things that you really would love to accomplish, those are there for a reason. That's how your heart's been wired. So if you hide all those things in the lives of other people, how are any of those things ever going to get done? How are you going to find that joy that comes from doing the things that you've been designed to do?
So beautifully said. And it also gets me thinking a lot about where to find your sense of fulfillment.
Mm.
So we spoke, or you spoke so eloquently around finding that fulfillment in how you take care of others at the loss potentially of your own identity. So for a woman who may be going into this new phase of life and is struggling with her identity, what might be some guidance you would give her that would help her to find her new sense of fulfillment?
Mm. Well, the first word that pops into my head is compassion. It's like you have got to have compassion for yourself. Because again, as women, we often go straight to the place of we judge ourselves, right? It's like, I should have been doing this or I should have been doing that. And, now here I am and my kids don't need me and my husband and I have nothing to talk about and it's my fault somehow. I should have been taking better care of all of these things. So compassion for yourself, empathy for yourself. And then once you've got that, not getting stuck there, not feeling like, oh, poor me. I I'm okay. I'm all right. I forgive myself for not having, taken more control of my life. But instead, be getting curious about who you are. Curiosity is like probably the biggest tool we have towards deciding and choosing and becoming who we want to be next. And that kind of fuels us with this energy and joy that like I get to just explore now. Like I get an opportunity to say, maybe I would like to try this or that or the other thing, right? And I think that's where you plug into the joy. It's like, who am I can be a question that makes you feel like, wah, wah, who am I now? Or it can be like, hey, who am I now? I want to be an interesting person to myself. So what do I need to do to make that happen?
That I think, like you said, compassion first and then lean into what brings you joy is
Mhm.
so tangible. It's so actionable for so
Yes.
many of us, even if we're not yet at this particular stage of life. How can I really have true and deep compassion for myself with where I'm at, whatever it is I might be grieving or going through?
Yeah.
And then how can I find more joy in my life right now, as opposed to focusing on the things that are changing and perhaps, with that social commentary that might be running through the back of my head saying that I mean less if I age
Yes.
more.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I think that, those are just such a wonderful platform to build on. It's like if you have those things, then you can start trying stuff. And that's the other thing. I think a lot of the women that I work with, they're almost afraid to try. It's like, oh, I won't be any good at that. I'm like at an age now where I know I wouldn't be very good at that, or I've never done that before, so I feel uncomfortable doing that. Like for example, I have a good friend who decided she wanted to start kayaking and she invited all of us to go. Me and another friend who were in a kayak, we crashed upon re-entry into the beach and like tumbled in the waves. And it was like one of those moments where I thought, okay, this is it. This is all over. I guess this is how I go out. But you can either be brave and try things like that and decide, you know what, kayaking's probably not for me. Or it just fuels you with so much energy to know, you know what, I did something really hard. I did something that was so far outside of my comfort zone. And whether I decide to do it again or not, it created this courage in me. So I feel like that's a huge piece of this time of life is like, to not get so bogged down in all the things that must get done and should be done and how you should be feeling. And instead, give yourself chances to do things that just like scare you or enliven you or you've never thought that you would ever do. And just see how you feel because until you try it, you won't know how you feel about it. And even if you don't like it, it sparks something inside that makes you say, wow, I can do new things. I can try new things, and that will bring you joy.
Okay, I love this conversation because we've talked about a lot of different ways that we can really help to foster and nurture that relationship with ourselves. So I
Mhm.
want to shift this a little bit and think about relationships with others because as you're navigating this transition, I'm sure that it can be potentially challenging with relationships with others. It might be your spouse, it might be children, it might be friends who may or may not be going through the same thing.
Yeah.
How do you continue to nourish those relationships as you're going through a potentially challenging season?
Well, I am like a huge proponent, and this sounds really very simplistic, but of just telling the truth because I lived a very long time trying to like candy coat stuff for other people just to make it a little bit easier for people to hear me. And, like maybe this will go a little better if I say it a certain way. And instead, as I've gotten older, I've learned that the power of just saying what's true is remarkable. It like is like pouring water on a very dry and parched land of a relationship. And yeah, it can be hard. I mean, it's not easy to always say what's true, but the thing that you can say what's true in this time of life for the people around you is, hey, you know what? I'm changing and I'm going to be trying some new things. And I'm probably going to be making some mistakes and maybe not handling things the way I would like to, but I'm trying to do things a new way. So please know in advance that if I'm out here doing stuff, trying things, saying things, breaking things, that I'm not trying to be hurtful. I'm trying to find what's next for me. And I think my kids have so appreciated that. I have 3 adult kids. I have 2 grandbabies and another one on the way. And once we got to a place where we could have those honest conversations, like and they're cheering for me. It's like, yeah, go do it, try, fail, and when you fail and you want to do something different, come and talk to us about it. So I feel like that's a huge piece of it, just being really honest with yourself and the people around you that things are changing and some things might not be as comfortable as they were before because you're kind of waking up and saying, there's a few things I'd like to do before I leave this planet. And it might not always jive with what you expect from me.
I love how you phrase that too, because it is so open and so honest and yet so vulnerable too. So it doesn't come across as you're trying to push some agenda on someone else. It truly is you trying to find yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there could be some people when or upon hearing this kind of language balk at it. And so you might find that relationships may become tense with particular people in your life. So, how do you navigate that?
Well, again, I know my perspective has taken a while to grow because I used to care very much what other people thought.
Mm.
And as you step into this space, and you don't have to do it, a huge, big blow up space, you can just bit by bit say, no, thank you. I don't care to do that. I would rather do this instead. To kind of start, it's almost like building a muscle, right? Like the more you practice, the stronger you get about not having people around you be happy all the time. I mean, it's okay for you to do things that other people are not that great with. I mean, that's okay. And I think that's where we as women have a tendency to, they're probably more female people pleasers than male people pleasers. And it's a right for you to step into the space that you've been given in the world and say, this is how I would like for things to be. And to just be okay with the times when other people are not okay with that, because there are times when you're not okay with what they want to do. That's what it means to be human beings living together, right? So I think that's a huge piece of it, that if you feel like you can't do or say or try something because of someone else's judgment or what disappointment or anger or whatever it is, then there needs to be some real conversations happening around, this is who I am, this is who you are. We're not the same person. And even in the faith-based world, I often try to tell women that, when God said the man and the woman get married and they become one, he didn't say one of them disappears into the other one. They become something more together than they were separately. So to get rid of that idea that, oh, if I'm going to be a good wife, if I'm going to be a good mother, then I need to disappear into these people. That's never what God asks us to do. So I think that's a lot of it. It's like stepping into that space of being like okay with people maybe not understanding, people not appreciating. The other piece of it is wanting other people to support you and say, yes, that's a great idea. If you don't get that, that's okay too. Go and do what you want to do. You don't need their approval, their cheerleading to try the things that you want to try.
I love that you mentioned that too, because you often forget that when you look outside of yourself for all of those things, you forget that your biggest supporter is yourself.
Yeah.
And so being able to cheerlead yourself, being able to support yourself through all of these amazing new experiences that you're
Yeah.
about to have may just be the key that you need to unlock this next phase of your journey with more joy and with more compassion and grace for yourself.
More joy for sure. Yeah. And I just think, and I think that the other thing that's really important to make it a point of is that what we're not saying here is that it's an either or. It's not, I'm either connected to my family or I'm out here operating on my own, finding myself, right? And finding the joy that I never had when I was with my family, right? That's not what we're saying. We're saying that it's okay to be both. It's okay to be connected and deeply in love with the people that you love and deeply invested in their lives. And also pursuing the things that make your heart sing. So I think that's a lot of what happens with women is we run out of time for one thing. We don't have time to do both. It's like we got to put our investment of time and energy into these people that we love. And that's what happens then when the transition starts to happen, where these people don't need you so much. And we start to feel like, uh-oh, what about me? Like I remember thinking that very thought when my daughter, she's my middle child. I stood in the driveway and watched her car drive down the street to take her off to college, and I was absolutely so, I don't even know a word to use to describe it. I could cry, and this voice inside of me was like, I'm so happy for her, but what about me? What about me? What am I going to do now? And so I think there's a lot of women who are walking around wondering that, and they know they feel like I shouldn't be feeling that way. I should be just so happy for everyone else, right? And it's okay to be happy for everyone else and want to have that joy yourself. So I think that's the biggest transition to make is don't think of it as an either or, it's a both and. You can love your people well and love yourself well too.
So wonderful that you said that. Thank you. Okay, I want to leave
Yeah.
you with one more question before I let you go. And you
Okay.
shared so many golden nuggets today, especially in terms of what to say to yourself, what to say to others, how to keep yourself going through this transition with so much more positivity and openness, which has been tremendous. So, in my last question to you, I wanted to ask for a woman that might be really struggling right now with this transition, what would be some words of encouragement or some guidance that you would share with her that she can implement, that she can take with her to start to see that shift in herself towards more positivity and joy?
Mm. I would say one of the biggest things that can be helpful is to not try to fill up the quiet and the painful moments with noise and activity. Give yourself a chance to feel what you're feeling. Give yourself a chance to listen to yourself. And I think that probably is one of the hardest things to do if you're coming out of a really busy season and suddenly I've had women tell me it feels like all the strings that were holding my life up just got cut and I feel like I'm falling. And instead of scrambling around trying to find, okay, wait, I need noise, I need people, I need activity. I can't let myself be by myself because it hurts. It's like the silence is deafening. I just don't want to. But sometimes that's the space you need to be able to really hear what's happening and to honor the sadness, right? It's like okay to be sad and excited about what's next at the same time. It's okay to grieve the years that are gone that you loved so much. Things have changed. That is true. And no amount of running away from that and pretending like it's not true is going to make it untrue. So I think that's a huge piece of it. It's like once you have that compassion for yourself and the empathy for yourself, to give yourself room to just sort of be held a little bit and say, yes, let's honor the passing of whatever has passed and decide that, it was beautiful in all these ways. These are the things I learned from it. And now I'm being given an opportunity to experience something brand new. Just like I didn't know what my life was going to be like back at the beginning when I got married and had these little people, I didn't know what family life was going to be like. And look at all the huge blessings that came from it. What huge blessings are going to be coming to me now if I can take my eyes off of what's past and start looking at what's ahead?
Mm, I love that. That is so, so helpful. Thank you for sharing
Good.
that.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I could
Yeah,
talk about this all day, so
me too, 100%.
yeah,
But I want to make sure that people can find you and connect with you, especially if they have more questions or desire your coaching. So, what is the best
absolutely.
way to connect with you?
You can find me at bloominginthemiddle.com. And I'm on Instagram at Jody Lee Cates with the C, Cates with the C. And I have like a 90-minute personalized midlife strategy session that really helps women kind of dial down. It's very personalized, 90 minutes. You get pre-support, in the session support, post support to kind of help you launch this season of, what is it about this season that's troubling you? What are you joyful about? What kinds of things do you want to celebrate? And what do you want to bring with you? And then start kind of digging into like what are you curious about? What would interest you moving forward? So I think that's the place where a lot of women they find themselves. It's like, I feel sad, I feel lost, I don't want things to be changing. So I'm just going to sit here and pout. That's what happened to me. I was like, I don't want to. So I'm just not going to do anything, right? So to help them see that, yes, it's okay to celebrate and be joyful, and also to start taking steps towards the future. And that's what that session will do for them. So you can find me there at bloominginthemiddle.com, the strategy session, or on Instagram. So
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your experience of going through this transition, all the wisdom that you garnered from that, and making it so implementable, so tangible, so effortless in how you describe this this transition can be. It doesn't have to be digging your heels in and pushing back and trying to run away. It can really be met with such grace and compassion so that you can more easily move through the transition, because that's where we're all going, that we'll all eventually get there and go through it.
I,
And
yeah.
why not go through it with open arms as opposed to trying to run away from it?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so much more helpful to have someone like you and to have a group of women to be able to go through it with, because when we can't give ourselves grace, we can give each other grace. And that just is so incredibly helpful.
So true. Thank you again for being here. I loved that this whole conversation. I know that we can go a million different ways with this conversation as well. So I'm hopeful that perhaps we'll have another episode soon.
I would love that. That would be great.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to share out this episode because there's so many golden nuggets that I know more women need to hear. And we'll see you again on another episode very soon.
Thank you.